I failed my garden again. Now, we all want to be able to grow that perfect garden, to grow perfect fruits and vegetables or even flowers. And in fact, we go to great lengths in order to ensure that we have great results. I'm Tony O'Neill and this is Simplified Gardening, where I show you how to garden in a simpler way. If you want that perfect garden to relax in or just want to grow your own nutrient-dense foods, then start now by clicking the subscribe button and the bell icon. Then click all to be notified each time I release new content just like this. Failing at something that you really love to do is hard. And it's an even more bitter pill to swallow than when it's through no fault of your own. Now, I haven't produced a video in over 7 weeks, and the reason for this was because I'd been struck down with vertigo. Although I had known people who'd had vertigo before, I didn't realise just how debilitating it actually is to you. 5 of the 7 weeks that I haven't been making videos, I've been stuck on the couch, not being able to move, because if I moved my head, I would get all dizzy, the room would start spinning, I'd be laying on the floor to try and stop it. It constantly made me sick. It was one of those most awful things. As soon as I stood up, I was really unsafe on my feet. Now, we will get to the garden in a moment, but I just want to pass on a message to all the new gardeners out there, because sometimes we're taken away from the garden through no fault of our own. And it's times like this that you need to really evaluate what's happening. So it's times like this that your garden suffers. And yes, sometimes we can rely on other people, but for me this year this wasn't possible because I was struck down with vertigo at the time when everything needed to be planted out. It was just way too much work for expecting other people to do. I've got 3 full-size plots here and I had thousands and thousands of plants that needed to go out, and it was too much to expect anybody else to do. Not only that, I wasn't even able to get off the sofa to speak to anyone, to even just water the polytunnel. So now I'm going to take you around the garden. I'm going to show you what it was like. I got a little bit of footage of that and what it's like now, because over the last week or so I've been cleaning it up ready in order to get things going for the rest of this year and into next. And we'll talk about some plans I have as well for the garden throughout the next few months. And this is where all the elephant garlic is, and at the moment that needs to come out. It should have been out ages and ages ago, and it's the standard garlic was here and that's totally rotted into the ground now. It's probably going to come back but won't be no good. Over on that bed there was where all the red onions were, and they're on the floor there just drying out. This section here is where I put in some swede, some brassicas. All the dry weather we had has basically turned everything, it all bolted, so I've pulled all of that out. And these are pretty much the only crops I really got into the ground, but I'll explain that as we go on now. Here I've just got some more onions and these need harvesting, and I've pulled a couple out. You know, these onions done okay, they're good size onions, and I think if I hadn't mulched these beds so well, then we would have been in a right state. Got apples over on the trees, so that's all looking good there as well. Now, here is the pergola that we built in an earlier episode, and that's absolutely gone bananas. It's totally covered and it's looking really good. The leeks all went to seed and there is grass on them now, so we can pull those off as well. The rhubarb's going to end now, so this is now going to be feeding the root system really well. We did have peas along here which I did manage to get out, and they all went to seed as well. Here are a load of buckets that I set up for a trial video that you will see the results in, but because all of my potatoes, none of them have been watered since the day they were actually sown, so all they've had to fend off is the actual rain that we've had. And this is just my normal crop of potatoes. It's still ticking over, and a few of you have asked how this cow panel worked with holding up the tops? Well, as you can see, all the tops are still held up straight. They're not flopping all over the floor. It worked really well. And considering I haven't been here irrigating these, I don't know what the crop is going to be like on them. This area here, you can see that I recently sowed with a green manure. So this was all weed and I took it off, and we've sown this with a green manure called Hairy Vetch, and it's a perfect time to get this going. Believe it or not, this was probably sown not even a week ago, and look at it already. And it's a great time to sow it because it'll germinate quickly and it'll get a lot of growth before winter kicks in. We've had loads of roses and stuff off there, and we've got a video coming up on propagating roses very shortly. The strawberries went nuts. Excuse the weeds in here, I haven't got to this section yet, but the strawberries went nuts. Not that I saw any of the fruit this year, because being ill I never got around to dealing with it. And of course we've got our figs that are still growing away there, but are not producing for us just yet. Down here it's a mess, so excuse it guys. Alright, but down here we built a fence at the bottom, and that's where the sweet peas were, and they've done really well this year. And in fact there was absolute tons on there, and they've all gone to seed now, so there's still the odd few flowers, but we've got absolutely tons of seed in order for next year, so we will have plenty of sweet pea seed when we collect these. Couple of cherry trees we planted, and this was as far as this plot got, so I never got to plant anything out here, and I'll explain that as we get up the plot. But I don't know if you remember this greenhouse here. This greenhouse, right the way up to this greenhouse was sheds, and I took down the first shed, which was here, and I built this greenhouse, but I never got around to finishing it before I became ill. And I planted some yin yang beans here. Next to that I planted some beetroot, and then right on the far end was broad beans. Now the broad beans went to seed. The beetroot started to go to seed, but I caught them in time so we were able to harvest them. Now that area and in amongst these beans have all been sown with a green manure as well. So this was the first structure that we took down that was here, and we were able then to build this start building this greenhouse, big double greenhouse here, ready for next year. We then took down this one. This was the area between the two sheds that had all the blue barrels, and this is now filled with manure piled up. There's over 10 ton of manure by here, believe it or not, to fill the hole and what's left over on the mound. This week I took down another building that was here, so we've got 4 of the 6 buildings that were here down. And what I've decided is where I was going to build the building at the back of the plots as a storage room is going to come here, because there's a really good floor here. We just need to build a decent structure around it. So that's the idea here. At the moment you can see the state on these sheds. They're falling down, they're not very safe at all. I'm just storing some junk around by here. The fruit plot is doing really well. The raspberries and things have all recovered quite well after the move in the beginning of the year from the last place when we were further down in the gardens. The josterberry gave lots of fruit, which is good. The gooseberries give lots of fruit. They're all coming more or less to an end now. This area now is being used as a dumping bay, so we still got a load of blue barrels here and everything else we need to sort out. All this building is coming down, so I weeded this area, but they are my Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes, whatever you want to call them, and they are just packing on the weight at the moment, so we'll have a video on that. I got a big strip of weed here in amongst all the asparagus ferns, as you can see down the end there. This area was weeded and I covered it over because we've got a bit of bindweed that's crept in, and that's in amongst the asparagus beds here, and underneath that that weed membrane there, so it needs to be dug out, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get a hold in this area. The IBCs are there, all filled with water, and this is the timber out of the buildings that I've been able to keep towards building the next one, and some old fences and stuff. I've got a load of comfrey here that needs cutting down. Like I said, guys, it's a mess here because I haven't been here for the last 8 weeks with being so ill with the vertigo. The fruit trees are all doing really well, and the good thing about the bark chip is, you know, it's fantastic at keeping the weeds down. You know, I've been here 8 weeks and look at it. So it's really is good for managing this section. And even considering that all these trees were recently moved, we've still got quite a few apples on some of them. You know, some good size apples. So, and I wasn't expecting any fruit this year, so that's really good. So we'll come back down by here and we'll walk up the other part of the garden now. So there's lots that has happened that you haven't seen. Unfortunately, like I said, I've been really unlucky in the fact that you can see the garden I've got on top of again, considering the amount of weed, but I've got so much more work to do over the next few months. Okay, so all this year is all junk, and it will all be going or used elsewhere in the garden. Everything's a mess here, and this is now I've been able to get in here because I've cut down all the grapevines. This is what it was like, but the tomatoes, well, look at the mess. They grew, but because I wasn't here tying them up, I've all grown along the floor and everything else. So this year has been a total waste of time for me. Apricots are growing really well, so we've got absolute tons of apricots in here, all growing really well, so that's good. Grapes growing well too. We've got grapes all over the shop here. But this is what I wanted to show you. I got ill at the completely wrong time, and everything is still in pots. I never got everything out into the ground at all, so it didn't even have a fighting chance. All of my marrows, my courgettes, my pumpkins, my beans, everything still all here, all in trays, was all waiting to go out. These chilies even grew chili plants in them tiny little pots with no water. It's amazing. So as you can see, apart from the few crops like the beetroot, a couple of the beans, the potatoes and the onions and garlic, this year has been a total write-off for me. 99% of the stuff didn't even get out of the greenhouse into the ground, but that's just life. So it's important to give yourself times to recover and take that time that you need to get well and prepare yourself, and then come back to the garden, because it's all too easy to quit. Now, I will be continuing to make videos as normal from this point on, so hopefully you'll see a lot more content from me and giving you the quality that you're already used to. I just want to say hi to all the new subscribers that have come on over the last few months, because there's been lots of you, and welcome to the channel. And for those of you still supporting, I really appreciate that. One of the next videos is we're going to see what we've had out of the potatoes area, because a lot of you followed that planting for that, so that will be the next video. If you've enjoyed this video, you can subscribe here, and when you've done that, this is the potato planting video that you need to watch, ready for next week's video. I'm Tony O'Neill, and this is Simplified Gardening, where I show you how to garden in a simpler way. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.